pleasure to welcome you all to the 16th edition of School of Tomorrow events, Guardians of the Future, Shaping Tomorrow with Generative AI. The non-profit SOT event series was launched by Beacon House in 2000 to engage global communities in conversations that shape the future of schools and societies. I would like to thank Google for Education, the lead sponsor for SOT 2023, and their partner Tech Valley. Our titanium sponsor is UBL. Other key sponsors include My Backpack, MK Books, Allied Bank Limited, Habib Bank Limited, and Wateen. We also would like to thank Franklin Covey and Leader in Me. We also like our SOT supporters including Paramount Books and Nestle, Pure Life, who have contributed to this year's event. My name is Aisha Ali and I am the head of school at Beacon House, Gulshan Campus, Rawalpindi. Please take a moment to note these important housekeeping points. Please ensure your cell phones are on silent. Entry and exit points are same. Always stay calm and follow our directions. Please use the SOT app to scan the QR code for question and answer session and also for the feedback session. Share your thoughts on social media using our hashtags, hashtag Guardians of the Future and hashtag SOT 2023. If you need assistance, our ushers are here to help you. Our fourth session today is a workshop by the name of Unleashing Tomorrow's Education, Amplify Learning with Google for Education. Facilitator for the workshop is Mr. Chris Betcher. Chris Betcher is a program manager with the Google for Education team based in Sydney, a Google partner trainer for the Asia Pacific region, and also operates a consultancy specializing in Google for Education platform. He works with schools across the APAC region to help them get the most from Google Workspace, Chromebooks, and the whole Google ecosystem. Prior to this, Chris was a K-12 teacher for almost 30 years, teaching curious young minds about art, computing, multimedia, and technology. Over to you, Mr. Chris.
Coming this afternoon, I always wonder if anyone comes to the last session on the last day. It's nice to see so many people here. My name is Chris. I am from the Google for Education team, but I live in Australia, and we are very casual. I'm getting used to the formality that exists here because we're very casual people. Also, I just want you to notice that I've grown a beard, especially for the occasion. When I came to Pakistan about a month and a half ago, I came clean shaven and I noticed everyone had a beard, so I thought I'd give it a go. And this is the best I can do. I'm terribly sorry. So I am program manager for Google for Education, and as you see, Google for Education and Tech Valley are a major sponsor of this event, amongst others. I also, just so you know, I have what's called a Level 1 and a Level 2 certificate. Has anyone got a Level 1 or Level 2 certificate for Google for Education? Anyone in the room? Okay. Can I suggest if you use Google, one does, if you use Google for Education, these are certifications you can sit for and actually get recognised with a recognition and a badge. It certifies that you actually know what you're talking about, okay? And it also leads on to, once you have a Level 1 and Level 2, you could apply to become a trainer or an innovator, which are two higher programs. If you want to know more about that, go to the Google for Education website, edu.google.com, and you can read more about it there, but I just wanted to point that out. I thought I'd just start showing you something that's partly fun, but partly something you might use in your classrooms. So I'm just going to click on that map of Australia, and it's going to take me over here to Google Earth. Oh, I think I've already opened it. It's already here. Can anyone recognise where that is? It's right here, exactly right. We are in this big building here somewhere. But I just wanted to take you on a little tour. How many people have actually been to Australia? Anyone? Anyone? A couple of people, fantastic. So I just wanted to, let's fly from where we are here, and we'll fly down to Australia. And Google Earth is such an amazing tool for education. It really is. There's so much you can teach and learn using Google Earth. So this is Sydney, in case you've never visited here, and this is the city right here. There's some lovely beaches over on this side. There's an airport down here somewhere. But I just wanted to fly you into to this place. If we go in a little closer and just fly you in here. I just thought you might be interested. This is the Google campus in Sydney. So you can see this building here, that building there, and there's another one, and I'll actually just zoom you in there and show you. So this is one of our buildings called ODI, stands for One Darling Island. My office is in the back of that building there somewhere. And we actually build a lot of stuff in Sydney. I don't know if you know this, but Google Maps, how many of you use Google Maps? That's like everyone. So Google Maps was actually invented in Sydney. So we started it in Sydney. There's still a big Google Maps team, but we also build Chrome OS. We also build Chrome. YouTube has a presence there. Google Drive has a presence there. This is a lot of engineering going on in this building. I think it's the 5th biggest engineering centre for Google globally. So just a little piece of trivia for you. Next time you go to a trivia night, you can say that. And flying over here, this is the other building called PIR, or Pyramid Road, and mainly in this building it's things like marketing and sales and legal and all that sort of stuff, all the supporting important stuff. And then flying over to that building there, that's called Wharf 7, and there's a whole bunch of stuff in there like catering and security and that kind of thing. So that's the Google buildings in Sydney. I just thought I'd show you because you might be interested. The other thing, since we're in Sydney, I thought we'd fly in and have a little look around. This is called Luna Park. It's a fun park, and it's got a big fun smile on the front. You walk through the mouth to get into the fun park. So I like the fact that you can come in here and actually just look around, right? That's kind of cool. I might just make that go full screen. So there's that, and then the other thing I wanted to show you, if I go to the next thing, is this big building here. Anyone recognise that? Sydney Harbour Bridge. You might have seen it sometimes on the TV. You see it on New Year's Eve, all the fireworks going off sometimes. So what you can do is you can actually climb up here. You can climb up onto the bridge all the way to the very top and have your photo taken at the top. My daughter works there. My daughter is a climb guide on the Harbour Bridge, so that's her office. That's where she works. Not bad, hey? And then you probably recognise this building as well. Sydney Opera House, one of the most iconic buildings in the world. So you're very proud of that building. It has a very interesting history, which you should read about sometime. But if I fly over here, no trip to Sydney would be complete without a visit to the beach. This is the very famous Bondi Beach. Anyone heard of Bondi Beach? Yeah, so that's Bondi Beach. It's a pretty lovely place to go. And just finally, before we fly off, a lot of people, when they think of Australia, they think of the outback. So they think of this kind of thing, getting right out of the middle of nowhere, where there's no people, hardly any people, and lots of desert. So that's a little quick tour of Australia. Now, I showed you that because A, did you find it interesting? Yes. Fantastic, that's mission accomplished. But B, do you think you could use this sort of technology with your students? Yes. Now, I know this is not AI, right? We're not talking about AI right now, but this is pretty cool technology, and it's freely available to anyone that wants to use it. In fact, if I just come back out of full screen mode, you'll notice that up here it says earth.google.com. If you just go to your web browser and go to earth.google.com, you can browse the entire world. You can go anywhere in the world, right? And I think if you can go anywhere in the world, that opens up some interesting possibilities for teaching students. Would you agree? Yeah, fantastic. So anyway, I just want to start with that one because I just kind of thought it was fun. All right, let's carry on. So we're going to talk about a few things. Some of them I just really need to give you some information. There won't be a test at the end, so don't panic. It's fine. But I do want to tell you some things about Google for Education that I think are relevant. And then I want to just show you a few tools that you can use in your classroom. And I'm going to attempt to do all of that in less than an hour, right? Considerably less than an hour. If you have questions along the way, please do ask. I'm used to going to conference events where everyone is sitting there with a computer on their lap, right? And I've realised that's not the case here, right? So towards the end, I'm going to take you through some tools that you might use, you might like to explore, and I've tried to pick things that work on a mobile phone as well. So if you've got a phone with you, you might like to have a play along as you go along. If you've got a computer, you can do that too, but you don't need one for today. All right, so Google for Education. Google is a very large company that does a lot of really interesting things, but we have a special part of Google called Google for Education. Right? It's a special division within Google, and it deals specifically with the schools and education. We currently have about 170 million users of Workspace for Education. worldwide. There's about 50 million students using Chromebooks around the globe, and there's more than 50 million users of Google Classroom. How many have used any of those tools? Okay, a lot of you. How many of you discovered Google Classroom during COVID? Yeah, it's a pretty common thing. One of the things I would say to you is a lot of teachers discovered things like Google Classroom during COVID because they had to, but don't be one of those teachers that now that COVID's not around anymore, you just bounce back to where you were, right? Because it's a great tool when you're not remote learning, right? It actually was designed many years before COVID. It was designed for in-classroom use. It wasn't designed for COVID, but it happened to be very good at it. Now, when I talk about Google for Education, there's 4 things that I'm really talking about. One is called Chrome OS, which is one of these things, which I'll talk about in just a sec. The other is a thing called the Chrome Education Upgrade, which will be very easy to explain. I'm sure you'll get that very quickly. Google Workspace and Google Classroom. That's kind of the family of things that when I say the word Google for Education, that's the group of things I'm talking about. Does that make sense? Okay, so I just want to unpack some of them for you and just say that like some of the reason that technology in schools is growing the way it is, not just here in Pakistan, but pardon me, all around the world, is because we've got this increased need for digital platforms to deliver learning. I think schools discovered during COVID that you can do a lot with digital platforms. You can deliver learning in ways that you didn't really imagine before. And although we kind of did it in an emergency, a lot of schools are realizing that's a pretty cool thing to have. There's a greater need for adaptive and inclusive tools, so tools that everybody can use, that adapt to people's individual needs. And finally, there's an increased need for operational innovation, right? As technology goes into schools around the world, like it's expensive to run technology. It's expensive to run a school, right? But when you start putting technology in it gets expensive. So how do you get increased operational innovation that you can do more for less? So this is Google Workspace, and you probably recognize some of them. What's this one? Oh, what's this one? This one? That one? Ah, gotcha. Okay, good, excellent, fantastic. So we have a whole bunch of tools in there, and together they form this thing called Google Workspace. And they all do different things, so a word processor, a spreadsheet, a slides presentation, forms. Well, we've got a whole bunch of tools that do a whole bunch of things, right? The neat thing about it is that that set of tools is really good for doing things like collaboration and commenting and having people work together. How many of you use Google Workspace regularly? Okay, so that's most of the room. So I won't dwell on this stuff. You get this stuff, all right? It's good for collaboration, great for leaving comments for students, great for all that back and forth workflow between teacher and student. Lets you share stuff, and of course it saves automatically. Now, I do want to make you aware that there are 4 versions of Workspace. We only ever used to have one, and it was called Fundamentals, right? And it was the only one available. And then a couple of years ago, schools were asking for more. Schools were saying, can we have this feature and that feature and this feature? And it comes a point where you just can't afford to make everything free, right? So we created a couple of different versions of things that the schools do pay for, right? But they have extra features. One's called Standard. It has a whole bunch of security and management features. This one has a whole bunch of teaching and learning features, particularly around Google Classroom and Google Meet. And this one has everything. So this has everything in all of those. Make sense? Okay. If you happen to be in a Beacon House school, fortunately, you have access to the Plus edition, okay, which is nice because you have a bunch of additional features. Some of the things you get in the free version, well, you know what you get in the free version. In the standard version, you get additional management, advanced reporting, better log files, more control over applications. Unless you're a network manager, probably doesn't mean much to you, but it's important. If you're a teacher, you get a whole bunch of extra teaching features, so things like being able to video conference with up to 250 people, live streaming up to 10,000, you can record your meetings, you can use breakout rooms and translated captions and unlimited originality reports. So this is the stuff you get in that teaching and learning edition. And then of course in that Plus edition you get everything, right? Plus, on top of that, you also go up to 500 instead of 250, 100,000 live stream instead of 10,000. You can have easier collaboration because there's some additional tools built into those. There's basically more stuff, right? So I just want to make you aware of that. I think as we have this conversation and you start to hear these terms being used, I just want everyone to understand what that means. And finally, with that Plus Edition too, you also get extra storage. And for many schools, and particularly universities, that's a big deal. They get additional storage as well. Okay, this is a list of some of the additional things you get in the Plus Edition. So you get like some extra features in Gmail, some extra calendar features. There's more things in Docs. This is a cool one. This is really underrated. I really like show editors. There's a feature in the Plus Edition of Docs. You know when you get students working together on a document and you've had multiple students that have all worked on it, and then at the end you kind of go, I don't know who did what. Anyone have that problem? And I know you can go into the version history and you can look through it, but it's a bit like being a detective. With show editors, what you can do is you can pick any sentence or any part of a sentence, any word, right-click on it and say, show me the editors, and it'll show you who worked on that sentence. It's really great for teachers to know who did what during group work. So lots of little things that make a big difference. Some other things there. In Classroom, you get things like class visits. So administrators of the school can drop into a classroom without having to be a member of that classroom. If anyone here is like an administrator in a school, you might have 8,000 classrooms, yeah? This solves that problem for you, right? So that's pretty cool. Practice sets is another one where we have some AI features for building essentially smart worksheets for students to sort of consolidate knowledge. YouTube questions, where we can build questions into YouTube, so the video will play for a bit and then stop, ask a question. If the student gets it right, it continues on. Okay, so lots of great features, both in Classroom and in Meet. All right. Second thing I just want to tell you about is that's the software side of things. The hardware side of things, we make a platform called Chrome OS, Chrome Operating System. Now, I'm sure most people in this room probably do or have used Chrome on your computer? Yeah, will that be a yes? Okay, it's a pretty popular browser. And a couple of years ago, we decided, we said, well, if it's such a popular browser, what if we could build simpler, lighter, cheaper machines that didn't have as much heavy-duty hardware? Because Chrome's pretty lightweight, right? If you're not pushing around Windows and Mac, right, you can actually build a machine that does more with less, right? And so the idea of a Chromebook was to build machines that are not, they're versatile. So this one, I think a great example, this one. If you open this one up, right, it's got a camera at the top there that tilts around so you can take photos on either side. Some of them have touch screens, some of them fold over into tablets, some of them are desktop machines. So lots of versatile machines. They're really fast to use, surprisingly fast to use. Who's used a Chromebook? Okay, a few hands go up. They are really fast to use. They're super simple to manage. They update automatically. I hate that thing with Windows where you open your computer to do some work and it says updating. And it's like you can't do anything for the next 20 minutes, right? So this all happens in the background and automatically, which is a really nice feature. And they're super secure. So just a couple of things. 2008, we launched the browser. 2011, we turned the browser into an operating system to run an actual computer. It comes in different types of devices. So this is a Chromebook. It's a laptop format. But they also come in Chrome boxes and Chrome bases. So different form factors. If you want a desktop style machine, you can have that. If you want a little plug-in thing with plug a monitor in, you can do that. Okay, so lots of different formats. The advantages of these things over a traditional computer, they have really long battery life. Typically 10 to 12 hours. So they easily get through a school day. You can work online or offline. There is a bit of a myth about Chromebooks that says if they're not connected to the internet, they're pretty useless. Not true. You can put it into an offline mode, so it works when it's offline. Now, of course, you can't do everything. On any computer, you can't send an email if you're not connected to the internet, right? You can't download a file from the internet if you're not connected to the internet. So obviously there's limitations. You have the same limitations here, right? But you also have an offline mode, so it can do a lot of things while it's offline, just like a normal computer. There are apps for everything. They come in all shapes and sizes. They're very secure right from the start, and they stay fast over time. I have so many computers, I have had in the past so many computers that are very fast when you take them out of the box, and 3 months later, they don't feel as snappy as they did when it was new. And then 6 months later, it's really slowing down, and then a year later, it's nearly unusable, and you've got to wipe it and start again. Anyone relate? Yeah? So these things not only start fast, but they stay fast. Every time they get an update, they actually get a little bit better, which is such an unusual concept. I just mentioned this really briefly. If you've got old computers in your school, so not Chromebooks, but if you've got old regular computers, like Windows machines or something, and they're running a bit slow, Everyone goes, yes. Right. What you can do, we have a thing called Chrome OS Flex where you can actually download the operating system for Chrome onto a memory stick, stick it in and boot that old machine and install Chrome OS on that old machine. And remember I said Chrome OS is a lightweight operating system, so suddenly that old machine runs Chrome OS really well, whereas it might not have run, I don't know, Windows 11 or whatever really well because it's just too much of a heavy operating system. So you might like to check that out. They boot really fastly, not even a word. I don't know if this is on or off. If I open that up, okay, you see how quickly that opened? Now that was kind of powered on already. If I powered that off completely and opened it up, it's about 6 seconds before it's ready to use. Compared to many other computers where it can be 30 seconds, 2 minutes, 10 minutes, right? Who knows? So they have a lot of advantages over a conventional computer. The folk at Tech Valley are currently working to get Chromebooks into the country. It has been somewhat of a challenge, would you say, to get these machines into the country, but we are on the cusp of fixing that problem and you will be able to get access to Chromebooks in your schools very soon. Particularly, there's a number of school systems, including Beacon House, that are looking at bringing those devices into schools, one-to-one programs for students and so on. So all of that becomes made possible because we can get devices that are lightweight, fast, inexpensive, secure, and in-country, right? So, and just as we just finish up on that bit, one of the things I think is really neat is we have never, ever, ever had a ransomware attack on Chrome OS. A ransomware attack is that like a virus kind of thing where your computer gets infected. Ransomware really means that your computer gets infected and then the people who infected your computer demand money to uninfect it, right? And it happens surprisingly often. We've never had one on Chrome OS because it's pretty much impervious to those kinds of attacks. So that's the Chromebook. They are really cool machines, super easy to manage. I haven't really talked about the management side of things because I think I'm mostly talking to teachers here. Would I be right? But if you are an administrator or a network manager, like they are super simple to manage. And when something is super simple to manage, it costs less to manage because you need less people spending less time doing the same work, right? So you actually save a lot of money on that. Oh, and the other thing I didn't mention, because it's a lightweight operating system, it consumes less electricity. So they actually use about 40% less electricity to run, which is a kind of a really neat advantage. So between the using less electricity to run and charge up and then going for sort of 10 to 12 hours on a battery, there's a lot of advantages there. The other thing I did want to mention is this thing called the Chrome Education Upgrade. It's a fancy name that really means it's a license to connect your Chromebook to your school workspace, okay? And it makes it manageable. So there are some things you can manage on a Chromebook without the license, but if you really want to manage your Chromebooks and put restrictions on things and make sure students can't do certain things or can do certain things, you need to be able to manage them. And it's this Chrome Education Upgrade, which is a license you apply to the machine that makes it manageable. Does that make sense? I often don't know if I explain that very well, but does that make sense? Okay, cool. It basically puts the administrators in control of the machines. They can stop people from logging in unauthorized accounts, stop access to certain social media, like you can block Facebook, or you can manage it in any way you like. And there are a whole bunch of different things you can manage on the device. What we call user policies, things that follow the user around. So if a user goes from one machine to the other, that policy follows them around. And then there are device policies that apply to that specific device. Network settings, managed settings, app management, all built into that Chrome license, that Chrome Education Upgrade. And just to be clear, if you have 100 Chromebooks, you need 100 licenses. It's one device, one license, okay? All right, is there any questions on any of that stuff? That was definitely the quick tour through the world of Google for Education. Is there any questions? Sir?
You mentioned about pool storage. What is pool storage?
Pool storage? Oh, aren't you getting into the weeds? Pool storage is, in your domain, you get a certain amount of storage for your domain. So for example, Beacon House, I'll use that as an example. So bh.edu.pk has a certain amount of storage for that domain, right? And it's what's called pooled storage. Everybody shares that storage. So we're not giving, it's not like everybody gets 10 gigabytes or whatever. Like it's a certain amount of storage, and everybody shares it. And like I mentioned with that plus license, as you add plus licenses, you add to that pooled storage. It gets bigger for everybody, okay? Good question. Sir, you have your hand up.
So in a classroom setting where students are using Chromebooks,
Yeah.
how the teacher know without roaming around each desk what students are actually looking at, which app they are opening up?
Well, I would wander around. So if you're asking for, is there a piece of software where the teacher can monitor what's on every student's screen? We don't build that natively. We do get requests for that, but in general, it's just not something that most people have asked for. There are some third-party tools that do that. I can't think, GoGuardian, I think is one of them. I can't think of their names now, but there are a number of third-party tools that allow you to do that. So if schools want that feature, you can certainly get it, but we don't do it natively. Thank you for your question. Anything else? All right. Yeah.
So what's the roadmap like? So what can we expect in maybe 2025?
Well, I can't tell you that. That's a secret. I need you to sign an NDA. No, there are a lot of things coming. I can't give you specifics because it's just, we can't announce things that aren't announced. But there's definitely a roadmap and there's definitely a lot of interesting things coming down the pipeline, both in software and in hardware. All right. I just thought I'd spend a moment. A lot of you said you use Google Classroom, yeah? Okay, I just want to spend a moment. I hope this makes sense for you. I've just mapped out here what I think is a fairly typical assignment workflow in a classroom. And it works like this. The teacher would think of something for the students to do, and you'd assign that work to the students. And then the student would do the work. And as the student's doing the work, you might provide some feedback to the student, and you might go around the feedback loop a few times as the student makes first draft, and you make a comment on it, or whatever they're doing, you offer some feedback, and they do a bit more, and then you offer some feedback, and so on. You all recognise this stage? Okay. Eventually, at some point, the student will submit the work. I really like this screen, by the way. The student will submit the work, and then once the students submit the work, usually the teacher will assess it somehow. They might grade it, they might offer a comment, whatever. They'll give some sort of assessment or feedback on that work. And then the teacher would return the work. And then eventually the student would receive the feedback, and then the teacher records the results. Would we all agree that that is bare bones an example of something that happens in a typical classroom? Okay, so what I want to do is overlay that with the features inside Google Classroom that map to that workflow. So for example, when you're assigning the work to students, you've got things like rubrics built into Classroom where you can sort of give students an idea of the sort of level of quality of work you're expecting with a rubric. I mentioned practice sets and read along. We'll talk about that more in just a moment. But these are also tools you can use as you're assigning work to students. When you assign the work and the student starts doing the work and you're in the feedback loop cycle now, there's a bunch of features inside Classroom like private comments, class comments, in-document comments, where you can add feedback. Like a private comment is just between you and the student. Class comment is between you and the entire class. Some things might be useful for everybody. An in-doc comment is a comment that you might be leaving on a specific sentence that a student wrote, where you highlight it in Google Docs and leave a comment on that bit. Really specific feedback. And of course, you could also fire up a video call and have a meeting with the student and talk through an issue. So you've got lots of tools there. All through this part of the process, we've got this feature called originality checks. How many have used this? It's like a plagiarism checker. Actually, I shouldn't say plagiarism. It's a similarity checker. What it does is it matches things that the students have done with things that might exist elsewhere and identifies that similarity. Whether it's plagiarism, that's your call, right? But that originality check feature in Classroom kind of helps all the way through this part of the process. When the student eventually submits the work, they've got the ability to attach, and they can attach anything. They can attach a Google Doc or slides or whatever, but they could also attach a PDF or a Photoshop file or a photo of their mum. They could do whatever they like, right? They could attach anything, right? When it gets attached and it comes down to you, when it gets to the grading stage, you've still got the rubric, because just something that was just as useful to the student when they were looking at doing the work is also useful to the teacher when they're grading the work. In fact, it should be. The originality check that happens at that part of the process is also available to the teacher So they can run an originality check as well to make sure the student knows not too much similarity. As you return the work, you've got the ability to use all these different commenting levels within Classroom to give feedback on the appropriate things. When the student receives the feedback, you have the option of turning on a feature called Guardian Summaries, where it can send an email once a week to the parents to keep them updated on student progress. So long as you're using Classroom to manage what's going on in your classroom, this is automatic. It's such a cool feature, right? And then finally, as you record the results, you notice that there is a mark book inside Classroom where all the grades can go. And in some cases, some schools connect it up to their school information system and they actually synchronise it with their SIS. Yes? Yeah.
Is this tool available to the students as well?
Yes, absolutely. 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 In the free version of Workspace, you can do up to 5 originality checks, right? In the Plus version, you can have unlimited use of originality checks.
It gives it in a percentage form or what?
It does both. It tells you how many instances of plagiarism occurred, or similarity occurred, and also what percentage of the entire work. Yep.
Just the way Turnitin does.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. And I'll try and show you an example of that in just a sec. All right. So, any questions on any of that? Because I know I want to have some fun. I want to play with some things. Right? All good? Any more questions? All right, let me just show you a few things. I'll show you the originality thing, seeing you asked. Classroom. This is where you find out I'm not a very good typist, especially under pressure. Right. Okay, so, thank you. I want to go to this one. Right. So let's pop into Google Classroom. Now, bear in mind, I work for Google. I used to be a teacher for many years, but I am not in a classroom right now. And so everything I'm showing you here is sample. I say sample data now. I've stopped calling it dummy data. All right. But it is sample data. So I'll just go into this demonstration class, for example, and hopefully I've got something in here I can show you. So a couple of things inside Classroom that are relatively new, and especially new in the Plus edition of Workspace, that I think you'll find useful. You see over here it says practice sets, and it's labelled new. If I go to practice sets, you'll see that a practice set, and I think I only have a couple of them in this particular, I have so many Google accounts you wouldn't believe it, right? But this is an example of a practice set. I've only got a couple in here, but you can have as many as you like, right? And if I open one up and just show you what's in it, so you can see you can create these sort of smart worksheets where you can create questions for students. Right, now I've used maths here as an example. Math? Do you say math or maths? Math, okay. In Australia we call it maths. I don't know why. There must be 2 lots of math. Anyway, so you can create questions on any subject. I've used maths as an example, but you can create it on any topic you like, right? When you create a question, what you're really doing, if I just go into the back end of this one and just show you, what you're actually doing is you're creating a question, the acceptable answers, and you're indicating which ones you'd accept. But where it gets really interesting is when you create a question. So when I typed in this, find the examples of a half, right? It automatically here in this skills section pulled up this thing and identified this. I can't read it that close. Identify equivalent fractions is what it says. If I click on it, there you go. Identify equivalent fractions. So when I put the question in, the AI in the background kind of went, oh, you seem to be asking a question about fractions. I have some good resources about that, so I'm going to suggest this. And if you accept that suggestion, what it does is it adds some useful resources into there automatically. Now, that's all powered by AI, right? Now, I think we're going to do a whole lot more with AI in this product, but right now there's some fairly subtle but useful uses of AI in here. And it's in that suggesting of features. So that's an example of how we're using that in practice sets. The way that plays out, if I was to go into a class, like my demonstration class, and into classwork, and create an assignment, you'll notice that what you get in here, you get practice sets as an option of something you can add. So if you've created a math worksheet and you want to use that, you simply create an assignment, attach the math practice set to it. So I click on math practice sets there, you'll see that it opens up like so. And it goes into my practice sets collection. I'll pick the fractions one and say attach. And so then it takes me back to my assignment, hopefully, and now that practice set is attached to the assignment. And when I send it out to students and they interact with it, what happens is when a question has one of those hints, like that little video, if the student gets stuck on a question, they just click a little light bulb icon and it plays that hint for them. And so the idea is it helps students automatically through if they get stuck. So that's an example of practice sets. We don't have a lot of time in this session, so I would love to deep dive into each of these things, but I'm not going to. I just want to give you a taste of everything. Is that okay? Okay, so that's a bit about practice sets. The other thing I wanted to show you, what was the other one to show you? Originality reports, that's right. Do I have an example here? Oh, I have so many Google assignments here. I know, it's in a different classroom. I have this sample classroom here where I have all the children from The Simpsons. You see, in my class here, they're all Simpsons characters because I have this weird sense of humour. So if I go into my classwork here, I think I have a couple of examples here. It might be how does a nuclear reactor work. Review that work. No, I don't actually have it here. I have too many accounts. I was going to use it in the other one. But anyway, so the originality reports, what it does, sorry, let me have one more attempt to see if I can find the one I'm thinking of. Maybe it's this one. No, it's not that one. Too many things. Too many things. Maybe that one? It's not. Okay, I don't have that particular example there. Sorry, my head's in another Google account where I do have this example, but you'll just have to take my word for it. So what it does is it puts just a little, when the student submits the work, there's a little button underneath where they submit the work that says check for originality. And all they do is click it, that's it. And then what happens is it goes out and it runs an originality check. What that means is it takes the student work and it essentially Googles the student work or compares the student work to everything on the internet. And if you're in the Plus edition of Workspace, it can also compare it to previous students' work. So if a student comes along and tries to hand in the same essay that their older brother handed in 2 years ago, it will pick that up. Right? So it's a pretty neat feature. That's the originality report. We had a look at Google Earth before, so I won't sort of dwell on this one now because I'm very mindful of time. But earth.google.com, and you can navigate anywhere in the world. You can look at anything, anywhere, street view, 3D views, okay? It's an amazing tool in the classroom. You can use it for almost anything. I did want to show you this one, and if you have time right now, grab your phone, go to your Play Store or your App Store, whichever flavour you use, and search for a thing called Google Arts and Culture. If you just search for Arts and Culture, you'll find it, right? Now, I'm going to show you the web version of it, but it's the same on the phone, obviously smaller. Okay, arts and culture. And I'm always shocked that so few teachers know about this. Let me tell you where this came from. Probably 12 years ago, Google went to some art galleries like the Tate and the Met in New York, and they kind of said, would you like to have your collection of stuff digitized so it can be on the internet? And these museums didn't have any money to do that, so they said, of course, we'd love that. So we worked with them to digitise their collection, to bring a lot of resources from art galleries. Originally, it was only art galleries, onto the internet. And the more we did, the more museums and art galleries around the world said, oh, can we be part of that as well? And so we now have thousands of galleries and museums and everything from all around the world that have got their stuff in this collection. This is probably the world's largest in one place collection of digital media about culture, and it is an astounding collection, and I'm always shocked that so few teachers know about it. So let me just show you an example. So I'll go to the home page here, and of course I'm just going to use Pakistan as an example. So if I go up here to the search and I type Pakistan, and you'll see what happens here. So it's found a whole article here about Pakistan. There's a whole, the Pakistan's Museum of Food. Did you know there was one? Apparently there's a Museum of Food. Here's a whole theme about the wonders of Pakistan. If I scroll down the page, you can see it has things about the Citizens Archive of Pakistan, the State Museum Art Collection, Heritage Foundation. Then there's these stories like here's the Lahore Museum, the Pakistan Modern, celebrating modern truck art in Pakistan. There's some really wondrous and bizarre and surprising things in here, and it changes constantly. It's constantly growing. Is there anything on that page you'd like me to click on? The food one? Yeah, sure. I knew you think the same as me. So Pakistan's Museum of Food, Tastes of a Nation. You can come down here. There's a little video that will play, I think. I don't know what that video is.
पाकिस्तान के लोग खाने के बेहद शौकीन हैं हर वक्त उनको कुछ ना कुछ मजेदार खाना चाहिए
I won't play the whole thing in the interest of time, but you get the idea, right? So it's that, and if I keep scrolling down, there's a whole bunch. There's a food tour through Pakistan, what to know about Pakistani culture. There's some things, cuisine. Shall I go to cuisine? What to know about Pakistani cuisine. Now, I will tell you, Pakistan is not the largest thing in this collection, right? And it's grown a lot. I think, Umar, you remember when we first started looking at this, there was very little about Pakistan in here. And now there's a lot. And we've actually been working, thanks to Tech Valley, we actually raised this with the arts and culture team and said, we need more of this content in here. And so they've been working with us to sort of help flesh this collection out. But, you know, if this is just what I can show you about Pakistan, imagine what you can find about the rest of the world as well, right? And so you can come down through here, introduction to the cuisine. There's a whole, and these are all like historical, real photographs. Not AI generated, real photographs, right? But actual historical photographs. And they tell the story of things, right? Now, I don't know what you teach or how you teach it or what age group you teach to, but do you think just from the little glimpse I showed you, there is something in here you might be able to use with your students? Right, it's an amazing collection of stuff. And I believe if you go right down to the bottom of any of these collections, down the bottom here, where is it? Yeah, here. It'll actually tell you where all the credits are, who's responsible for it, right? Especially in any art, this is a bit of a sort of a pop culture article, this one, but if you go into anything that is a little bit academic, it will tell you who's responsible for writing it. So it'll give you the full credits for where it's important. So yeah, that's one example. So if you've loaded it on your phone, and you're having a little play as I speak, like there is a ton of stuff in there. The nice thing about the phone is because your phone has a camera on the back of it, there's some additional stuff in the phone version that is a lot of fun. Like you can take a photo of yourself and turn yourself into the girl with the pearl earring or, you know, cool stuff like that. So do spend 10 minutes exploring and then you'll sort of go, where did the last 3 hours go, right? Because that's what it's like.
And 20 hours.
Exactly. So yeah, do check that out. It is an amazing, amazing collection. So that's art and culture, and we had a little look at Google Earth. Now, if you were in the keynote the other day, you saw me bring this slide up. I talked about the AI principles. We're very big on the whole AI principle thing, so I won't dwell on that now, but I really do recommend you take a look at this link, ai.google. Like I said, don't worry about the other bits. You'll find it once you get to ai.google. I mentioned it the other day, but I'll just reiterate that, you know, Google has built many of these AI models. So whatever, I don't know what you've seen about AI over the last couple of days, but whatever it is, we probably built it originally, or at least started the avalanche. And of course, we've got a whole bunch of stuff built into Workspace that is all very AI smart. Now, there's a couple of specific things that are AI. I've already mentioned practice sets, where we have that AI feature where it will suggest resources for students and so on. I didn't really show you, but at the end of when a student does the quiz, it gives you a sort of a result page that says what they got right, what they got wrong. The light green ones, if you can see the light green ones there, is if they had multiple attempts. But what's really interesting, and I know it's probably impossible to read there, but this section at the top here is an insights panel, and it will actually, the AI will actually highlight and flag things in the student results that you might miss. So if there's a student that struggled or a question that was too hard, the AI will pick up on that and it will actually warn you about it. Right? It's a great little feature. The other thing worth checking out is readalong.google.com, or again, if you've got a phone, there's a read-along app. So check it out. And it has, this is for young students. It is an AI tutor, this little tutor, her name is Dia. Dia is a tutor that sits in the corner of this app and helps young students read. It's all mapped to lexile and like reading lexile. So as a student chooses a book and learns to read it, as the student tries to read the book, it will assist if the student stumbles. If they're not sure of the word, it will give them a couple of attempts and then help them. It will track the student's progress. So it's a little smart AI avatar that sits there and steps your student through. Not certificates, but it issues stars. So every time the student does read something, they earn stars for doing it. So it's gamified. And I'm sure you'll be pleased to know it's also in Urdu.
Is there a record of the students also, like where is he standing right now? Or something?
I'm glad you mentioned that. Yes, I don't have that slide here, but we are. And again, this is one of those things. I can't say too much. But wouldn't it be a cool idea if that was integrated into Google Classroom?
But this is free and that could be...
Correct. Yeah. So yeah, you will see you will see read along become integrated into Google Classroom, and then all the reading progress that students do will be tracked inside Classroom, and it'll give you a reading progress chart for every student. Yeah.
I hope it's cost effective.
Oh, it'll be free.
It will be free.
Yeah, it's free. Yeah. So check it out on your phone, or if you're on a web, just readalong.google.com. You may have heard of Bard. Anyone heard of Bard? So everyone talks about ChatGPT because that's the one that got all the airplay. But Bard is our language model that competes in that same space. So I've got... Oh yeah, I'll come back to that. One of the things about Bard is we're building it right into Google Docs. So I think I mentioned this the other day, where you open your Google Doc, you'll get a little button that says, help me write. And you go in there and you say, help me write a story about whatever, or help me write a job application, whatever it might be, and it will actually write it for you, right? And the neat thing about the way Bard does this stuff is it will, in fact, let me just go into Bard. This is not the one inside Google Workspace, this is just normal Bard. Okay, so has anyone used this? Okay, if you haven't used it, it's the usual kind of thing. You put a prompt in the bottom here and it will generate a response. It keeps a track of all your responses on the side. I'm thinking about buying an apartment at the moment as an investment, and like I clicked on this little thing and I said, hey, I'm thinking of buying this thing. Would it be a good investment? What are the vacancy rates? And it gives me this whole description about whether I should buy an apartment. But questions like, for example, the Turing test that I spoke about the other day. Like I said, what was the question I asked? Is the Turing test still an appropriate measure of machine intelligence? If so, why? And if not, why not? And it's given me this whole article, the pros and cons. And then I followed that up with another question that said, would Bard pass the Turing test? And it said, well, it's possible, but it could also fail. It's a subjective test. So it gives me this whole conversational thing. Now, here's the thing I love about Bard, and I don't know if other things do this, they probably do, but I really like this. One of the problems with generative AI is when it generates an answer, you know it can make stuff up, right? Yeah. And it sometimes does. I think Bard is less prone to making stuff up than some of the others because it's hooked into all the power of Google search behind the scenes. Just one second, I'll come back to you. What I love about this is when it does generate an answer, you've got this button at the bottom here, this little Google button. When you click that, what it does is it takes the response that it generated and goes and Googles the response. So now when it comes up like that, all that green stuff, that's where it's found evidence of those things being true. Right? So anything that's kind of a neutral statement like this one, there's no real facts involved in that, right? It's just left it. But anything that's fact checkable, it's highlighted in green. And occasionally, if it finds something that it wrote that it can't then cross-verify, it marks it in red. So at least you know. Sorry, now, yes.
How do you compare Bard with that Microsoft?
OpenAI. Oh, Bing? I'd like to say I've used Bing, but I haven't. So I don't know. Look, I think Bing uses ChatGPT, which I know is pretty good, so it's probably pretty good. I don't know, but I'm the Google guy, so I use Google. I should. There are other people who do that. So, I mean, there's a whole bunch of other things, and you can ask it to explain things to you, or, test things, or whatever. It's an amazing tool. You can ask it some great questions, like what type of dog would be most suitable for a family of young children? They live in a suburban area, have a small backyard, the children are 4 and 7, provide pictures. Right? And it gives a recommendation about the best dog breeds with pictures. I think that's kind of cool. Again, if you haven't used Bard, you can go on your phone, open up your browser on your phone, go to bard.google.com, and then what you can do is, I think on both Android and iOS, you can sort of say, pin this to my desktop, so you can keep it on your phone as an app. But yeah, there's a lot of really neat stuff you can do there with Bard. One of the things I wanted to show you, if I got it here. So these are just some prompts we were playing around with in some training I did with some Beacon House teachers last month. You know, the more specific you can make your prompts, the better results you're going to get. So something like design a lesson about earth science is not a great prompt. But design a 3-part lesson for a class of Year 8 students on the topic of earth science, include a practical activity to be completed using a Chromebook and Google Earth, using the redefinition level of the SAMA model, include a 5-question quiz as a follow-up activity. That's a good prompt, and you should see what that generates. Like, it generates some really good stuff. Create a short story for children aged 7 to 8 about a trip to the zoo. Create different versions of the story to accommodate a range of reading levels. The more specific you can be with your prompt, the better the responses you'll get. Does that make sense? Okay, so there's that. Any questions on any of that stuff? Very mindful of time. I've got 2 minutes. I'm going to show you 2 things in 2 minutes, right? One of them is this thing called Diffit. It's not a Google tool, right? So I'll just say that up front. Google do not make this, but I think this is so cool I wanted to show you. It's called Diffit. I believe it's diffit.me. And this is an AI generator that was specifically built for teachers. Someone want to give me a topic we can generate? What are you teaching? Give me a topic. Anyone? What is it? Chemical bonding. Chemical bonding. Okay. For what year level? Okay, so I'm going to go chemical bonding. Oops, sorry. Told you my typing. Chemical bonding. For what year level? Grade 8. Perfect. We'll go grade 8. And you can do it in English. I'm going to do it in English, but you'll be excited to know you could do it in Urdu, right? It actually has that language here, which I think is great. And now, when you say generate resources, here's what it generates. It generates a reading passage. It generates a summary of the reading passage. It generates some questions for a quiz. And again, I wish this was a Google tool because I think it's awesome. But it has a Google connection, don't panic, right? So here's what it's come up with. It's got chemical bonding. It's generated a whole short passage there aimed at a Year 8 reading level. I don't have time to read it, but you can scan through it, tell me if you think it's okay, right? Underneath that, it's got a summary, a 3-point summary. Then it's got key vocabulary words. Then it's got multiple choice questions about that, followed by some short answer questions and some one open-ended prompts. That's pretty cool, right? Wait, it gets cooler. This button that says export and share, check this out. This is so good, right? Export and share. If I click that, it has a whole bunch of export options, right? You can export it out to be a Google quiz using Google Forms, or you can export it out to be a Google Doc. Or if you want to do like a Freya model chart, it'll export it out to a Google Slides presentation as a Freya model. Or you can do, you know, a timeline workbook, vocabulary drag and drop. It just generates these things. Now, I'm going to just show you how it generates the Google form, but you can try it with other things. When you do the form, you can choose which bits you want to include. If there's, let's say I don't want to include the summary, right? And I'll say open with forms. It will now generate a Google form with all that AI generated stuff in it. And you can either share it directly to Classroom from there. This is the Google connection, right? Or you can say, let's just open it and have a look. So it opens up this form that looks like this. And if I just put this into preview mode so you can see what the students would see. So they get the adapted reading passage. They get the key vocabulary words. They have it turned into an actual quiz, right? Including long and short answer questions as well. And I know, right? But if I go into those questions, you'll see that they're not just questions. If I click on them, in fact, I just go to settings and show you, like it's actually turned it into a quiz. right? So it hasn't just like made the multiple choice selections, it's actually a quiz. And when I go in there, you'll see that it has marked the questions with an answer key worth 1 point, and it's indicating the correct answer as well. So I reckon that's a time saver. Yeah, it's a good question. I haven't asked it to include a picture, but you could always just in the settings. You could, because it's a Google form, you could always just click on the picture button here. You can just add your own picture. So if it doesn't do it, you can add it as yourself. Okay. So there's that, and just the very last thing, and I'm not going to show you, but you can play with it. Go and check this thing out. This, again, not a Google tool, but the other day, if you were there for that keynote the other day, and I talked about the Turing test and machines that are conversant, and when do we know we're talking to a machine? Try this pi.ai. There's also an app if you're on Android. It is the most human-like conversation with a machine I've ever had. It's unbelievable, right? So go and have a play with it. So I hope I've given you some tools and some toys and some things to think about. I don't know if we have time for questions. I think I talked too much. But I hope you got something out of that presentation. I hope you've enjoyed the conference. Thank you very much.